Don't you want to try the coffee I made for you, honey? My husband, Ethan, asked with a strange smile that didn't seem real. I was sitting at my sister-in-law Molly's nice dining table in her home, where we gathered for our family brunch. The coffee in front of me smelled odd, almost metallic, and made my stomach uneasy. I'm Emily, 29, and never in my life did I think I'd question whether my husband was trying to poison me. But after 3 years of marriage and many incidents of getting sick, I had learned to be careful, especially around Molly. She always seemed to cause situations that left me feeling ill or embarrassed, and always with that same fake smile Ethan was wearing. How sweet of you, I replied, forcing a smile while my mind raced. The coffee smell was nothing like any coffee I had before. It reminded me of the time last month when I ended up in the hospital after drinking tea at Molly's house. The doctors couldn't explain what was wrong, and Molly had insisted she made it the same way she made her own. Molly watched me closely from across the table, stirring her own untouched coffee. Ethan's been practicing different ways to make coffee just for you, she said with a smirk. The way she said just for you sent chills down my spine. I had noticed Ethan spending more time at Molly's house lately, saying they were planning a surprise for our anniversary. But something felt off, the quiet conversations that stopped when I entered, the strange texts I saw on his phone, and now, this weird coffee. I picked up the cup, pretending to take a sip while watching their faces. Ethan and Molly exchanged a quick look that made my suspicions grow. I quickly checked my phone, stood up, and said, "Oh, I just remembered I need to make a quick work call. Molly, do you mind if I use your study?" As I passed by Molly's place at the table, I made sure to stumble, switching our coffee cups while pretending to steady myself. "I'm so sorry," I said, standing up straight. "I'm so clumsy." Molly waved it off with a tight smile. "Just don't break anything in the study." I nodded and quickly walked away, my heart racing. From the study, I could still see them at the table. Now, I just had to wait. From the study doorway, I saw Molly take a sip of the coffee, and my stomach turned with anxiety. I wanted to stop her, to warn her, but I needed to know the truth. I had been to the hospital too many times, always after eating or drinking something with them. It wasn't always like this. When I first met Ethan at a wedding 3 years ago, he was sweet and caring. Molly seemed nice too, inviting me to family events and helping with the wedding plans. But looking back, I should have seen the warning signs, the way she would spill something on me at big events or how my food always seemed to have too much spice when she cooked. The problem started small, upset stomachs, a little allergic reaction here and there. Ethan always had excuses. Maybe it was something else you ate, or you must be coming down with something, but it was becoming too clear. The worst was 2 months ago when I ended up in the hospital after breakfast at their house. The doctors found something in my system, but Ethan convinced everyone it was just expired medicine. I gripped the doorframe, watching Molly sip the coffee. Ethan was distracted, typing on his phone. My own coffee sat untouched on the table, still giving off that strange smell. Molly's hand trembled as she set the cup down. Her face suddenly went pale. "Ethan," she said in a shaky voice, "something's wrong." Ethan looked up, his face going white as he realized what had happened. He jumped up, knocking over his chair. "Molly, what's happening?" he asked. Molly's hands were shaking badly. I feel." She tried to stand but collapsed, grabbing the table to hold herself up. "Ethan, what did you put in that coffee?" I stepped out of the study, my phone already recording. Ethan was beside Molly now, his face full of panic. "That wasn't supposed to be your cup," he whispered, but in the quiet of the room, his words were loud and clear. Molly's eyes went wide with fear. "Call an ambulance," she said, falling to the floor. "Please." I dialed 911, staying calm despite everything going on around me. Molly was on the floor now, shaking violently. Ethan knelt beside her, looking terrified as he realized everything had gone wrong. "Emergency services," the dispatcher answered. "Yes, we need an ambulance at 312 Oakwood Drive," I said, holding my phone and recording with my other hand. "My sister-in-law is having a bad reaction to something in her coffee. She's awake, but shaking." As I spoke, Molly's eyes met mine. The cold look she always gave me was gone, replaced by pure fear. "Emily," she whispered, "you switched. You knew." "Ma'am, the ambulance is on the way," the dispatcher said. "Please stay on the line." Ethan was becoming more frantic. "Molly, what's happening? That wasn't supposed to be. It wasn't meant for." "Shut up, Ethan," Molly yelled, her anger pushing through her fear. "This is all your fault. You promised it would only make her sick enough to miss the meeting next week. It won't be traced. A chill ran through me. The board meeting, where I was set to present my proposal for a big client, the same one Molly had been trying to win for months at our competing firms. Everything started to make sense. The tea last month, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, and the breakfast incident 2 months ago, those weren't accidents, were they? Molly's face twisted in pain again. The tea was supposed to keep you home during the Johnson contract presentation, but you went anyway. She clutched her stomach, doubling over. Ethan said. He said we just needed to make you look unreliable to the clients. The sound of sirens grew louder outside. Ethan stood up, backing away. Molly, stop talking. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Molly spat, her words slurring. We've been planning this for months. Ever since Emily started beating me at every client meeting. You were supposed to make sure she drank it today. The paramedics rushed in through the front door, and I stepped aside to let them do their work. As they moved Molly to the stretcher, I stopped recording and sent the video to my private email, then to my lawyer. Ethan stood frozen, watching his plan fall apart. I'll go with her to the hospital, I told the paramedics firmly. I want to make sure my sister-in-law gets the right treatment. I met Ethan's panicked stare, and I'm sure the doctors will want to know exactly what was in that coffee. The emergency room at Nashville General Hospital was a whirlwind as doctors worked to stabilize Molly. I sat in the waiting room, phone in hand, replaying the recording of Molly's confession, the tremors in her voice, the panic in her eyes. It was all the proof I needed that I wasn't just being paranoid. Family of Molly Anderson? A nurse called out. I stood, noting Ethan's absence. He had mentioned something about parking the car 20 minutes ago and still hadn't returned. I'm her sister-in-law, I said, following the nurse. How is she? She's stable now, but we found concerning levels of toxins in her system. The nurse's face was serious. The doctor wants to speak with you about some unusual findings in her blood work. Dr. Smith, a tall woman with graying hair and sharp eyes, was waiting by Molly's room. Mrs. Johnson, could you tell me exactly what happened before your sister-in-law became ill? I took a deep breath, pulling out my phone. I think you should listen to this first. I played the recording from brunch, watching the doctor's expression change from concern to alarm. This is very serious, she said, taking notes on her tablet. The substance we found isn't something that accidentally ends up in coffee. We're looking at deliberate poisoning. Just then, Ethan appeared at the end of the hall, looking pale and sweaty. He'd clearly overheard the doctor's words. Emily, he started, taking a step toward me. Let me explain. Stay back, Dr. Smith warned, pressing the nurse's call button. Security to room 314, please. Ethan raised his hands. This is all a misunderstanding. Molly was confused. She didn't know what she was saying. Really? I pulled up the texts I had found on his phone last week, which I'd forwarded to myself. So these messages between you and Molly about making sure I was out of commission before the Henderson presentation were just friendly chats. His face drained of color. You went through my phone? After I found strange pills in your desk? Yes, I did. I turned to Dr. Smith. Doctor, I've been hospitalized 3 times in the last 6 months with strange symptoms. I'd like to know if they match what you found in Molly's system. The doctor looked at me seriously. We'll need to run tests to compare. Security will make sure your husband stays available for questioning, Dr. Smith added. 2 security guards stepped in, standing on either side of Ethan. He looked terrified, his carefully crafted story falling apart. Molly and I, he stammered, we were just trying to help you slow down. You were working too much, taking all the important clients. You thought poisoning me would help me slow down? My voice stayed steady, though my hands shook with anger. How long have you been doing this? Was it you who messed with my food at the Christmas party too? Ethan's silence told me everything I needed to know. Behind him, I could see Molly's room, where she lay connected to various machines. Her earlier confidence was gone, replaced by the fear of someone who knew they were caught. Detective Green is on her way, Dr. Smith said quietly. She'll want to talk to everyone involved. I nodded, a calmness washing over me. The truth was finally coming out, and there was no way back for them. Detective Green arrived within the hour. She had a commanding presence and listened carefully as I played the recording from brunch and showed her the text messages. Mrs. Johnson, she said, reviewing her notes, you mentioned previous hospitalizations. Can you tell me more about those incidents? I pulled out my phone again, opening a document I'd kept for months. The first time was in February, after a dinner at Molly's house. I had severe stomach pains and dizziness. The second was in April, the tea incident. And then in June, after breakfast with them. My voice was calm as I continued. Each time, the symptoms were similar, but just different enough that the doctors couldn't figure out what caused them. The detective looked at my log of dates, symptoms, and situations. And you've been keeping track? I noticed a pattern, I said, pulling out another phone from my purse. I also started carrying a backup phone with a different number. I used it to record conversations when I was around them. I have several where Molly and Ethan discuss their plans, though they're careful not to say too much. In one of the recordings, Molly's voice came through clearly. The Henderson account is worth millions, Ethan. We can't let her ruin everything we've worked for. Just stick to the plan. A few days of illness should be enough. Ethan's response was just as damaging. I've got something stronger this time. She won't make it to the presentation. Detective Green's face hardened as she listened. Through the window of Molly's room, I could see my sister-in-law was now awake, looking far less sure of herself than she had at brunch. The hospital is running toxicology screens, Detective Green informed me. Dr. Smith has already found several substances that don't belong in her system. We'll need samples from your home too. A commotion down the hall caught our attention. Ethan was arguing with the security guards, his voice rising in panic. I need to speak with my wife, he shouted. Emily, please, you don't understand, we were trying to protect you. Detective Green stepped between us. Mr. Johnson, you're not helping your case. We've already found evidence of premeditated. Premeditated? Ethan laughed, but it was a bitter sound that echoed down the hall. We were just trying to slow her down. She was working herself into the ground, taking all the major accounts. Molly said if we could just make her take some time off by poisoning her. Detective Green's voice was sharp. That's not protection, Mr. Johnson. That's attempted murder. Ethan's face went white. Murder? No, that's not, we never meant to. Then what exactly did you mean to do? I asked, my voice steady, despite the shaking in my hands. When you put something in my coffee this morning, what was supposed to happen? Ethan stayed silent. Behind him, I could see Molly watching through the window of her hospital room, her face a mask of fear and calculation. I wondered if she was trying to figure out how to spin this, how to explain away months of poisoning as some misguided attempt to help me. We'll need both of their phones, Detective Green told the security guards. And I want officers posted at both doors. Nobody leaves until we get the toxicology results. Dr. Smith entered Molly's room with a tablet in hand, her face serious as she reviewed the test results. Detective Green and I followed her, while Ethan stayed outside with the guards. Molly tried to sit up straighter in her bed, but the tremors hadn't fully stopped. The toxicology report shows high levels of several substances, Dr. Smith announced, her voice clinical. The most concerning is a compound usually used in pharmaceutical testing. It's not something regular people should have access to. Molly's face went pale. That's impossible. James said it was just something to cause mild symptoms, she added, her voice trembling. Mild symptoms? Detective Green interrupted, pulling out her notebook. Like the symptoms your sister-in-law experienced over the past 6 months. The door opened, and another detective came in holding an evidence bag. We found these in Mr. Johnson's office desk at the Anderson marketing firm. He reported, showing several small bottles with clinical labels and detailed notes on dosages and reactions. I felt my knees give way as I realized the full extent of their plan. You were keeping track like it was some kind of experiment. It wasn't like that. Molly protested, but her voice faltered. We just needed to track what worked. The first few times weren't enough. You kept showing up to meetings, so we upped the dosages. Detective Green examined the bottles. Did you know these substances could be deadly in higher amounts? The room went silent. Ethan, still visible through the window, sank into a chair in the hallway, his face buried in his hands. The Henderson account, I said slowly, putting the pieces together. It wasn't just about the presentation, was it? You needed me gone, permanently, because the client specifically asked for me as their lead. Molly's face twisted in anger and fear. You were ruining everything. I built that client base for years. Then you show up, and suddenly everyone wants to work with you instead. Ethan said he could fix it, she added, her voice now quieter. By killing me? The words felt heavy in the room, filled with accusation. "We weren't trying to," Molly started, but Dr. Smith interrupted her. "The concentration in the coffee you drank today," the doctor said, looking directly at Molly, "was much higher than previous samples we've analyzed from Mrs. Johnson's earlier hospital visits. If she had consumed it, the outcome could have been severe, possibly fatal." Detective Green turned to the other officer. "We'll need full warrants for both their homes and offices. Also, contact the pharmaceutical company listed on these bottles. Find out how they got these substances." Molly slumped back against her pillows, the fight draining from her. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she whispered. "Ethan kept saying we just needed one more try." I stepped closer to her bed, keeping my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. "Every time I got sick, every meeting I missed, every client I lost, you were both there, watching, taking notes, on how your poison was affecting me. What kind of people does that make you?" The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Outside, I could hear Ethan being read his rights as more officers arrived. Molly stared at her hands, not meeting my eyes. "Detective," I said, turning away from my sister-in-law, "I'm ready to give my formal statement now." The trial lasted 3 weeks, though it felt like a lifetime. I sat in the courtroom each day, watching as the prosecution carefully presented the case against Ethan and Molly. The evidence was undeniable: the bottles from Ethan's office, the detailed notes on every poisoning attempt, the recorded conversations and texts about their plans. What hit me hardest was their demeanor. Molly, usually so poised and confident, seemed small and broken in her seat. Ethan couldn't even look at me, his eyes fixed on the floor as expert witnesses described the deadly effects of the substances they used. Dr. Smith's testimony was particularly damning. She presented how the dosages had increased over time, showing clear intent to cause harm. A representative from the pharmaceutical company confirmed that Ethan had stolen the compounds through a college friend who worked there. The defendants showed a clear pattern of behavior. The prosecutor said in her closing argument, "This wasn't just corporate sabotage, it was a deliberate attempt to harm Mrs. Johnson, with an escalation that could have ended in death." When the verdict came, I felt no joy, just relief. Both Ethan and Molly were found guilty of multiple charges, including attempted murder and conspiracy. The judge's voice echoed in the quiet courtroom. The premeditated nature of these actions, carried out against a family member over months, demands the maximum sentence. I watched as they were led away in handcuffs, thinking about how greed and jealousy had turned 2 people I once trusted into something unrecognizable. Their business, their reputations, their freedom, all sacrificed in a desperate attempt to destroy me. 1 year later, I stood at the podium of the Nashville Business Leaders Conference, preparing to give the keynote speech. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was exactly the kind of opportunity Molly had tried to prevent me from achieving. The Henderson account, the one she and Ethan had tried so hard to steal, had led to several other major clients. I was now recognized as one of the top marketing executives in the region. Success isn't just about talent or hard work, I began, looking out at the audience. It's about integrity, about building genuine relationships based on trust. I paused, letting my words sink in. Sometimes the biggest threats to our success come from those closest to us, but overcoming those challenges makes us stronger. After the speech, several young professionals approached me, asking for advice. One woman, her eyes filled with determination, asked how I had kept my composure through everything. I focused on what I could control. I told her, I gathered evidence, trusted my instincts, and didn't let fear stop me from pursuing my goals. Later that evening, I received an email from the Henderson client, confirming they were renewing their contract for another 3 years. I smiled, thinking about how differently things might have turned out if I hadn't trusted my instincts that day at brunch. The local paper had run a small article that morning about Ethan and Molly starting their prison sentences. I didn't read it. Instead, I focused on the proposal for my next client project, knowing that the best revenge wasn't about getting even. It was about moving forward and succeeding, no matter who tried to hold me back.